Hello. I am so excited to be here with you at the convention on founding principles. I'm Nilmini Rubin. I'm the co-founder and managing director of Fix the System. We are a coalition of organizations that are committed to fixing our democracy. I spent most of my career in Republican foreign policy, and I made the shift last year to US political reform because I noticed the similarity between what was happening here in the United States and what we've seen in fragile and conflict-ridden countries. So today, I'm going to talk to you about two issues that are front and center in our fight for democracy here in the United States: voting rights and fair representation. So before we dive in, I'm going to do a little visualization with you. So I invite you to imagine a world where you are able to register to vote smoothly. The adult citizens in your community, regardless of their race or their wealth, are also able to register without a hassle. Before the election, you get information about the candidates that helps you figure out who would push for the issues you care about most. And you think to yourself, wow, we have a lot of great choices. You might decide to submit an absentee ballot, and you think about whether to drop it off in a lockbox or pop it in the mail. Or you might decide to vote early, or just because it feels right and you have a really good looking mask, you might decide to go to the polls and cast your ballot in person. And then when the results come in without any snafus or irregularities, you have confidence that the voting rights of the people in your community were respected and the election was fair. End scene. So this is the country we want to live in, the country we should live in, and the country we need to fight for. We cannot take our democracy for granted. The most brilliant thing that our founding fathers did was outline bold founding principles for our country, and then set a clear way to change things. Because they understood one of the most important truths of our world, that things change. And it's up to us to make things change for the better. In 1776, some of the most beautiful words included in the Declaration of Independence were that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. However, that concept didn't make its way into the Constitution. Millions of Black people were enslaved legally to be bought and sold and deprived of basic human rights. Those Black people, Native American people, women, people of different faiths and ethnicities were not allowed to vote. And in fact, votes were initially only granted to white men that owned property. So we've been a work in progress for more than 240 years. Our democracy really just needed fixing from the moment it was created. So it is now up to us to uphold the truths of the founding principles, even though our founding fathers did not. I encourage you to help register people to vote, even people that don't agree with you. Cast your ballot, volunteer at your polling station, and push your members of Congress and your state representatives to fund this election. Voting during a pandemic requires spending that voting in normal times does not. Your vote counts. Your vote matters. But right now, some votes actually matter more than others. Eligibility to vote varies in different states. So if you're a felon in Maine or Vermont, you can vote. But if you're a felon in 11 states like Delaware or Virginia, you lose your right to vote and you have to take steps to restore it. If you're an independent, you can't vote in a closed primary that so many states hold. In those cases, independents just have no say in picking the Democrat or Republican candidate. And for those who live in gerrymandered states, the only election that matters is the primary. So independents and people of the opposite party are just not able to weigh in. And that gets us to topic number 2, fair representation. Fair representation depends on fair redistricting. Redistricting is redrawing the lines of congressional districts. So as a voter in a specific district, I would only vote for the representative in my district. My husband, a few years ago, actually ran for Congress. And we hauled our 3 children all across the district as he campaigned. And it was really far. Though we live close to DC in a Maryland suburb, we were schlepping our kids up to areas close to Pennsylvania and West Virginia. My kids were like, why are we here? This doesn't make any sense that this would be daddy's district. And I explained to them, well, it's gerrymandering, which of course doesn't go over with a kid in elementary school. So since I'd done Montessori, I was like, oh, well, let's look for a coloring book to help you understand the shapes of the congressional districts in Maryland. And there wasn't one. So my middle daughter and I, she was 9 at the time, we actually made a coloring book. It's called The United Shapes of America. And each page has a state. You can color in the congressional districts. So even a child in elementary school can look at those pages and tell you what states are gerrymandered. It's pretty shocking and it's very clear. So what is gerrymandering? So gerrymandering is the manipulation of those electoral boundaries where you draw the congressional district that dilutes minority votes and it consolidates political power into the dominant group. Different ways that people gerrymander are either packing, it's called packing or cracking. So packing is when you put one group into one spot, and cracking is you disperse that group so widely that their votes barely matter. And that gerrymandering, it's leading to less competitive elections, less engaged voters, and unresponsive politicians. So actually, only 5% of the congressional districts in the United States are considered highly competitive in the 2020 election cycle. That means 95% of our congressional representatives are pretty much decided in the primaries. One dangerous result of this is hyperpartisanship and polarization. Both sides are driven to the extreme when their primary, especially a closed primary, is the only election that matters. We need a Congress that can problem solve and pass legislation effectively, and a citizenry that is not alienated by polarization. So redistricting matters right now. The census is underway. Every 10 years, we count how many people are in our country, and we use that data to redraw congressional district lines. Following the 2020 census, congressional district lines will be redrawn in every single state, well, except for the 7 who have low populations since they only have 1 district. And we need to ensure that the 2020 to 2021 redistricting process is a fair one. So what can you do about it? You can push your state legislature to come up with fair maps, ones that keep municipalities together and fairly reflect the makeup of your district. When you push at the state level, it's going to make all of the difference at the federal level. Our democracy is fixable. We can champion change across the United States. Vote like your democracy depends on it. Push for fair redistricting. Together, let's fix the system.